4 years ago, England won the Men's World Cup in the most dramatic of circumstances. On Thursday, they go again.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am now honoured to declare the ICC Men's Cricket World Cup 2019 open.
Stokes has hit that away into the leg side. Has he found the gap? He has!
Has it got enough legs to go over the top? It has just. I think his heart was in his mouth for a second there, Joe Root.
He is just absolutely having a blast, his own mark. 95 now off just 55 balls.
Root on 99, waits on O'Shane Thomas into him, and he's helping this one away down backward a square. A bit of a leap from him.
39 from 29. Here's Udana, and this has been hit again by Stokes. He's got all of it. It's 6 more.
Stokes as he gets the reverse sweep round. He slapped it up and over for 6. What a shot into the stand.
Here's the last ball of the World Cup final. Archer bowls it. It's clipped away into the leg side. They're going to come back for the second. The throw is picked up. They throw to the wicket keeper's head. He's run out, I think. I think he's run out. England think he's run out. England are convinced he's been run out. Wait now, listen. That tells you that England have won the World Cup.
You will be entertained. There is no need to worry about that. The World Cup gets underway in India this week. Every ball of every match across the BBC, on 5 Live, BBC Sounds and the BBC Sport website and app. There's also a daily TMS podcast, video highlights on the BBC Sport website too. And England, as if you needed telling, are the reigning champions after beating New Zealand in that incredible final at Lord's in 2019. So over the next hour, we'll discuss their chances of retaining the title. We'll look at some of the other contenders. We're going to be in India soaking up the atmosphere of an expectant host nation with Prakash Wakanka. We'll also take you live to Barbados, where Carlos Brathwaite is basically just going to make us all feel extremely jealous. Good evening, Phil Tufnell.
Good evening.
How are we? All right?
I'm very well. Getting excited now, just round the corner, isn't it? Listening back to the final there, and Agger's having a chat about it. I was in that box. We went absolutely ballistic. It was such a game. Incredible stuff. Never seen Lords like it. If it's anywhere near that, we're in for a treat.
Do you know what? We spent so much of the summer talking to each other about, you know, your memories of playing Australia and all that kind of thing. Now we can talk about you and the World Cup, because you were in the squad that got to the final in 92.
I was indeed, a few years ago now. Played, 3 or 4 games in it, and then got dropped for the final.
Which is why England lost.
Which is a bit harsh at the MCG, but it was a magnificent ride, and something that will stay with you forever. As I say, that was just a fantastic final as well. Should have won it. We had Imran Khan, LBW. We had a couple of decisions go against us, otherwise we would have been there. But fantastic. Really can't wait for it to get going.
We also have with us for the hour a man who's been involved in the last 2 T20 World Cups with England, including, of course, the victorious one last year. Tymal Mills, good evening.
Good evening, everybody. All good?
Very good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right. It might be a bit too much information for a Monday night, but I had a vasectomy about 3 hours ago, so I'm a bit sore.
Oh, my goodness me. Wow. Now... This is a first for me on the radio. How are you doing there, Tymal?
I'm all right for now. My wife just dared me to let the nation know. So
you're right,
I'm okay for today. I think tomorrow's going to be the tough day.
Phil, I've just got a naturally high voice. So that wasn't me putting it up an octave because of the information we were given.
Tymal, I've never expected you to say that, brother. As long as I've been in the game, I've never heard that one in my life. Well, I hope it heals nicely, pal.
I think
we'll be all right.
I think the best bit about Tymal was the sentence started with, "This might be too much information."
Oh well, we're past 9 o'clock, aren't we?
Yeah, it's fine.
Anything
Why not?
goes.
So did they knock you out or anything, or you just?
Nah. I'm made tougher than that. I didn't. I was awake for it all. It was. It was interesting.
Well,
I got tears in the eye.
What I will say, Tymal, is this is proper commitment. I mean, I don't know anybody who would have had that in the afternoon and come on 5 Live in the evening, so I can only say thank you.
There we go. And anytime. I'm looking forward to it.
The Cricket World Cup starts on Thursday. Fittingly, just like they did in that amazing 2019 final, England will face New Zealand. Very quick explainer of the format. It's dead easy. 10 teams. They'll all play each other in the opening group stage. Top 4 will make the semi-finals. This is the England squad. Jos Buttler, of course, captain. Moeen Ali, Gus Atkinson, Johnny Bairstow, Harry Brook, Sam Curran, Liam Livingstone, David Milan, Adil Rashid, Joe Root, Ben Stokes, Reece Topley, David Willey, Mark Wood and Chris Wokes. Phil Tufnell, how does this England team compare to that England team from 2019? I mean, there's a few familiar faces for a start.
Yes, there is. I think it's quite wide open, this World Cup, and England are right up there. They've got to be favourites or second favourites with the likes of India. Conditions are going to play a huge role in it. I think that's what just perhaps gives India the nod over everyone else, but I think it's going to be wide open. I don't think it's going to be a huge scoring kind of World Cup, and I think that this side, bags of experience in that sort of like top 5, and as well also the bowling as well. So I think we're in with a good shout. It's just about you've got to grow into a World Cup. You've got to find your feet a little bit, and I think England will do that. And you just can't bat one way. You've got to take all the pitches, all the surfaces into account where you're playing. They're going to be up and down and all around the place in India, and you've got to be flexible. And I think sometimes, these great big scores, 350, 400s, are not going to be there. It's about playing the situation that you're in, and I think that's one of the main reasons why the likes of Stokes was asked to come back. I think they've got a great shout. I think they really have.
Tamal?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be really challenging. As Tough has said, I think we'll maybe get into a bit more detail, but the travel is going to be a huge part of it. It's very different to hopping on a bus in England, and the longest journey you might have 3-4 hours on a bus if you're unlucky.
Oh, you haven't got on a bus in Middlesbrough, have you? I mean, could double that, no problem.
But in India, I've played in a couple of IPLs. I've toured out there before. They're very long days, those travel days. Sometimes the airport might be 2 hours outside the city, then you've got to get through the airport, wait around, you're on a flight for a couple of hours, and then you might have another couple of hour bus journey at the other end as well. So travel's going to be a really big part of it. England don't have a very favourable schedule in that regard. They play all of their World Cup group matches in different cities, whereas a lot of the other teams will at least play 2 in a city within a week, so they can have a week in one place. So that'll be managing, especially with bowlers as tournament goes on. Little niggles, little aches and pains, they might get exaggerated just a little bit maybe, but it's going to be a bit of a war of attrition. Obviously a hot World Cup, different, even within India, different climates. If you're up in the north in Dharamshala, it might be a bit cooler, but it's going to be interesting. It's going to be intriguing, I think, as Tough has alluded to, kind of different games within games, and you some of the lesser countries might fancy themselves a bit more at certain venues and fancy themselves to cause an upset here and there. So hopefully there are a few upsets. World Cups, no matter what the sport, are better for that, aren't they? But fingers crossed England will be there or thereabouts come the back end.
So do we think, Phil, then, that having players with IPL experience, of which England have got a few, is going to make a big difference in a number of ways, but particularly with what Tamal is talking about there, with the idea of acclimatising?
No, I mean, absolutely. Experience is the key in World Cups. If you've been there, you've done that. Conditions, crowds. You can be saying to the guys who haven't played there, that little bit of experience about what to expect and all these kind of things. So the guys with IPL experience will kind of be taking the lead there a little bit, I think. But all these sides now have got guys with IPL experience. You know what I mean? And that's why I think it's going to be so open. Even the minnows are fancy. Are going to create a couple of upsets, as Tamil was saying. So I think that England squad's looking strong. Where Harry Brook, I'm sure we're going to come into it, actually gets into the side, I'm not sure. There was all this sort of like hullabaloo about it, or wasn't it? We're going to get Harry Brook there. Where he gets into the side, I'm not quite sure. So we're very strong. We've got some very good support players as well, back up, like the likes of Gus Atkinson, a great sort of guy who's looking to make his way. David David Willey, bags of IPL experience as well. So I think England are looking pretty strong. India, for me, Australia, it's the big four, isn't it? You know, I mean, I think South Africa creeps into that as well. So, you know, I think that England have just got to play it cool. Take every game as it comes, take every surface as it comes, and they'll be prepared, that's for sure, this England side, and then just go from there.
Tamal, there's a great quote that I read in the Observer at the weekend from Owen Morgan, who of course was captain in 2019. He said, the strength in depth is now at a completely different level to 2019. We could genuinely put out 2 teams that could contend for semi-final positions and one that could go on to win. So the competition that Phil is talking about there with Harry Brook applies almost across the board, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And look, England, due to a COVID outbreak, had to put a complete second team out against Pakistan the other year. It beat them 3-0 in an ODI series. And as we just saw, England put out the second team against Ireland just now, and obviously convincing winners against them there. And it's true, as years have gone by, I know I'm only 31, but I've been playing T20 cricket only for the last kind of 7 years or so. And just in this last kind of 4 or 5 years, there's been so many more English guys just out there on the franchise circuit, playing all around the world, all year round. And so when it comes to your domestic summer, whether that be in the Blast or the 100, they're bringing it home and showcasing talents. And then it's pretty much, you're rarely seeing somebody get a debut for England or get a few games for England and do poorly. It's very rare that somebody comes in and looks out of their depth. Whereas in years gone by, I'm sure that would have been the case. So it just shows, as you say, literally everybody wants to be in that 11 or in that 15, say, for a World Cup. And the selectors, the job's getting harder and harder as years go on, because there are so many players out there at the moment that are capable of playing for England in white ball cricket, especially.
In India, you've got to play clever cricket, I think. You know what I mean? You can't just have one way of going about it. That's the only sort of thing I'm slightly concerned about, is this England side, you know, from the legacy of Owen Morgan, this is the way we do it. We keep going hard. I think as that World Cup final showed in England, I mean, it was a low-scoring game. What was it, 230 odd or something? You know what I mean? Sometimes you've just got to be smart and flexible and right on the game and sort of like where it is right now. You can't just keep playing one way, because sometimes those Indian pitches, they're going to be slow, they're going to be turning mostly. You've got to feel what is a good total. So I think that's going to be the experience of the guys from the IPL. Also the likes of Malan and Root, that sort of glue for that England top 5. You expect them to play, and the likes of Stokes coming in a bit later on will hopefully just find those scores that you can then work with, instead of just sort of like perhaps getting blown away a little bit trying to go too hard.
Is that, Phil, where maybe some of the test experience comes in as well? Because one of the conversations we had during the Ashes was, it's great that England play Bazball and it looks brilliant, but at some point you have to just sort of change the dial a little bit, don't you? You've got to move the dial a little bit. You can't just go with, this is what we're going to do and it's going to be all hell for leather. Kind of sounds like you're saying that's what this England team need to do.
So I was just going to say, I think England, they actually, I think I read they're one of, if not the oldest squad in this World Cup. So when Tuppers talks about experience, and as you say, that's not just experience in the IPL, that is test match experience, that's ODI cricket, T20 cricket, first class cricket. I think they've only got maybe 3 or 4 players that are under 27 maybe. Most of the guys are household names in England, been around, played, you know, large part of them won the 50 over World Cup 4 years ago. A lot of them would have won the T20 World Cup with the squad that we had out in Australia last year. So, and as you say, pretty much all of them have played at least 1, if not 4 or 5 years of IPL as well. So none of them will very few of them, will be out there not knowing-ish what to do. And they've got a lot of match experience, good experience under their belt that, as Tough has said, in the crunch games, in the close games, that's where you want your experienced players. You think years gone by, you think IPL's Chennai Super Kings, they kind of win it a lot of the time with a squad that, when you're talking pre-tournament, everyone's like, oh no, they're too old, they've got players that are too past it, but they've got that experience, and when it gets to the real pressure situations, they come through. So England have got a lot of experience there.
Yeah, and they've got a few guys there with cool heads. I'm liking Milan, Root and Stokes in that middle order. I think that they're the kind of guys who can assess a situation and put a score on the board. I think we're looking good. Got the likes of Livingston, Brook, if he sort of can find a place, Sam Curran as well. Moeen Ali, Rashid, I think Wood's got a part to play as well. I think he's going to be crucial for England. So, we seem to have most of the bases covered there. It's going to be interesting to see how Josh Butler sort of copes with it all, because you've got to have a cool head, as Owen Morgan showed in World Cups. You've got to marshal your troops, and it's going to be a big series for him.
Tamal, one of the things I love is that the number of programmes that I'll have done about England teams, men's teams, women's teams, all kind of different sports, and you always spend a lot of time sort of picking out the weaknesses. With this particular England team, it's much more difficult to do that, and you get to spend far much time talking about the strengths.
Yeah, and England have been the flag bearers, haven't they? Ever since that, when Owen Morgan and co decided that they were going to change the way England played white ball cricket, and they haven't looked back. And it's made for some brilliant moments, some brilliant TV, some brilliant, the lucky people that have been at grounds watching England play white ball cricket in the last 5-6 years have witnessed some special things, and they'll only keep trying to advance that. And as you say, a lot of teams now, of course, whenever it comes to a white ball tournament, they fear England. They know that they're going to have to get through England if they're going to win a white ball tournament, and they'll all be doing that. Obviously, conditions, as we speak about, will be different in India and might favour certain teams at certain grounds, etc. But every team will know they won't be looking forward to playing England, and they know that they'll have to be at their very best if they're going to come over us.
Yeah, they won't look forward to bowling at England, that's for sure. You know what I mean? That is
especially on some of the flat pitches, some of the wickets you get in India. There's a few grounds there where the bowlers, you go into the game bracing yourself a little bit. It's gonna, if you start poorly, it's hard to bring it back. And if when this England batting lineup gets on a roll, watch out at some of these stadiums around India.
Do you know what, Phil? I was tempted to focus more on the bowlers than anybody else, given I've got you two, and it's a long old World Cup. But you are desperate to talk about Harry Brook, so let's do it. Does he get England's best team?
Well, I don't know whether he does, I mean, after all this sort of, hoo-ha with Jason Roy and everything, I feel very sorry for Jason Roy, actually. A bit like David Willey last time when Jofra Archer came onto the scene. There's always seeming to be one fella who has to sort of move aside, but I don't think the selectors could have done anything more apart from pick Harry Brook. I mean, he's just been sensational across all formats, the confidence is with him, the momentum's with him, but does he get into your side? Does he get into your side, Tamal, at the moment? I mean, I've got sort of Bairstow, Butler, Milan, Root, Stokes, and then perhaps a Livingston, Curran. Where does he get into that side? You've got to have... Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, the one thing that Harry has got, though, is that he does have that flexibility to bat all up and down that order. So I think that's one of the main reasons why they did sort of prefer him to Jason. So if a fella out of that top 5 or 6 is in a bit of a run of poor form, he can slot anywhere. Fantastic player as spin as well. So I just don't know whether he gets into that starting lineup.
Yeah, I'm not sure he will. I think, as you say, they needed whoever the spare batter was going to be. It looks like they valued the flexibility of Brook over Jason, who obviously bats in the top 3 pretty much exclusively, whereas Brook can easily bat at 5 or 6 if needed as well. And you do when you're out in India, and you are going to need that flexibility. You never know, somebody could get sick morning of the game, and you need somebody to come in short notice. You don't want to be struggling and forcing guys to play out of position if you don't have to. So, I've got no doubt we'll see him during the World Cup. As I say, it is going to be tough. It's going to test your squad, this 9 games. I think that's going to be a theme of the World Cup. There's a lot of... Unfortunately, one of the things that's maybe dampened this World Cup a little bit has been the amount of injuries that a lot of teams are coming in with. Pretty much all of the nations are missing a few of their big names, which is a shame. But I think you're going to have a strong squad. And England certainly will, I'm sure, be relying on all 15 if they are going to go on and win this World Cup.
Earlier today, England beat Bangladesh by 4 wickets, and their first and last warm-up match, their other game against India, of course, on Saturday, was rained off. They chased down 189 to win with 77 balls remaining. There's been a lot of discussion, Phil, about whether or not England are undercooked. At least they've been in the pan today.
Yeah, absolutely. Good to get a run out. Good to get a win under your belt as well. Yes, there's been a lot of chat about people being undercooked, hasn't there? Just talking about the Ryder Cup. But
I was thinking about that. Do you know what? I wrote that down just now, whether or not there is a little bit of a comparison there.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that these guys nowadays, you're so prepared now, you know what I mean? They play all around the world. They never seem to be not playing, really. So I don't think that there's necessarily a big deal about that. I think they'll be ready. They'll be prepared for that first game against New Zealand, which will be a tricky one, even though they gave them a bit of a walloping over here. New Zealand, one of those teams, so well drilled, so well disciplined, do everything sort of like steady and right and get the job done. But I still think England are going to qualify. Of course, they're going to qualify. I think they're probably going to end up in the final. But no, they seem to be just easing the way into it and looking good.
For anyone who wasn't across it, part of the discussion about the Americans at the Ryder Cup at the weekend was that they hadn't spent enough time basically in Italy. They hadn't played at the Italian Open, all of their players, etc., etc. The big difference, Tamal, is, this England cricket team have time on the ground there. They've been there. They've been around the country. They had to travel so long to get there. So they're not, it's not like they've just rocked up to play a World Cup, and there's a limit to what you can do about the weather.
Yeah, exactly. And England have obviously been playing their series against New Zealand before flying out. A lot of them played in the 100 as well. And to be honest, that first warm-up game getting washed out, I'm sure a few of them wouldn't have been too upset about. They had a bit of a nightmare journey to travel out to India. They flew from London to Dubai, had a few hours layover there. And then they flew to Mumbai, and I think they had 8 hours wait in Mumbai before another domestic flight. So it was like a 38-hour journey, I believe, and then they had a game.
I still think you've had a harder day, Tamal.
I'll take that any day.
Quite possibly. But I think as I said, this team's got bags of experience. As I said, a few of the bowlers probably needed a run out. Mark Wood and Adil Rashid hadn't played in any of the white ball games in September, so they'll be good for a run out. Yeah, England won't be too worried. They'll just want the whole thing to start now, I think.
Yeah, Tamal, how crucial? I mean, everyone keeps talking about the spinners and India and what have you. I think the likes of Wood, Topley, Wokes, and these guys. I think they're going to have a huge role to play. Especially Mark Wood did very well last time, didn't he?
Yeah, and Woody, he only played a few games in the IPL this year, but he took wickets and he bowled really well. Again, you might see him get dotted in and out a little bit, look after his body, and you could see Gus Atkinson come in for the games where Mark Wood is maybe rested over the course of the tournament potentially. He's going to have a massive role. He's one of, if not the quickest bowler in the world. I'm sure he'll be the quickest bowler at this World Cup, and Josh Buttler will use him as a real impact bowler throughout the middle of the innings, I'm sure. I think Ahmedabad could be a good one for him. That's normally got a decent wicket there with good carrying, good bounce, and decent sized boundaries. I think Wood's going to have a huge part to play. Adil Rashid, as Owen Morgan often said, is the most irreplaceable player in this England team. So he's going to need to play every game. If an injury was to pop up there, that could be a little bit worrisome for England potentially, because Rash is so good and so consistent. He rarely has a bad game. Goes for a load of runs. So I think the bowling lineup's going to have to really just back up the batters, and then when it's their chance, when it's their game, if conditions do suit, really cash in. And that's where you see the likes of Chris Wokes and Reece Topley, those new ball bowlers. They'll be looking to make early inroads for sure.
Yeah, well, what are you thinking as a seam bowler, Tamal, over in India? How do you go about it, if you know what I mean? What are your things to do? Plenty of change-ups, or what,
Well, the thing is, you have to assess conditions so quickly, and that's even before you get to the ground. You need to know traditionally what type of ground it is. So do your homework in that regard. Look at games that have played there before, whether that be IPL games or international cricket, because you need to know if it is a ground that traditionally does swing a bit. Depending on where you are, you might get a ground that for the first 6-7 overs it actually might swing a bit. So okay, I really need to be fuller here and really be on my straps. But likewise, you'll go to some grounds where okay, this is a 350 plus ground more often than not. The boundaries are small, the wicket doesn't do very much. So straight away, you've got to alter your line and length that bit sooner. And it might be a pitch where you need to go to your cutters early, and that's where maybe the smarter teams will get a little bit of advantage throughout this World Cup. Those teams that adjust 5 or 6 overs quicker, as opposed to maybe just holding their line and length a bit too long and then having a few loose overs, as opposed to changing lengths and going wide or going into the pitch, whatever it might be. So that'll be important before you get to the ground and you're planning, and then once you're out there in the middle, once the game's on as well.
Phil, let's talk a bit more about Adil Rashid. You mentioned him there. This was in Wisden this week. Really nice line. Rashid is a modern-day white ball titan who is as important to England's World Cup hopes as anyone. You agree with that?
Yes, absolutely. I say bags of experience now up there, in the top white ball bowlers in the world. Got all the tricks, all the experience, matured nicely as well, can bowl under pressure, can bowl at any time as well. I wouldn't be surprised if you see him dotting about. But England like to use him in those middle periods to take wickets, and he's a genuine wicket taker as well. So, I think Josh Buttler will be leaning on him heavily if there are partnerships to break in those middle overs. He's going to be the boy to come in and do it alongside Mo and perhaps Livingston a little bit, with his offies and leg spinners as well. But absolutely crucial for him, and I expect him to be one of England's leading wicket takers. He's one of those guys, who get sort of 3s and 4s in games. That's what Buttler's going to be looking for him, not necessarily just to sort of like bowl tight and sort of, get into the game, so to speak. He wants to come in there and make an impact, and that's what he does now. He gets wickets.
We haven't mentioned, Tamal, David Willey describing himself as the dependable donkey of the team. I still haven't cracked that. Can you translate, perhaps?
But I guess, look, knowing Dave a little bit, he's obviously putting himself down in one regard, but like the dependable old donkey that keeps trudging along. You can shove all your luggage and everything on the back of it, and give it a kick every now and again, and it'll fire up again. And it speaks to, I guess, he's speaking to his own longevity, where maybe he's been in and out the side a bit, but he's still, he keeps going, he comes back, and more often than not, he does a job. He's obviously a good batter as well, very good in the field, and he's worked on his bowling in terms of other stages of as opposed to just bowling with the new ball as well. So it's great to see him back in the squad. He obviously was the one person that lost out as part of Jofra's rise 4 years ago. He was the man that had to make way and had to sit and watch that whole World Cup that he otherwise probably would have played in. So, look, knowing Dave a bit, I'm really pleased he's getting his go again. And as I say, I'm sure you're going to need a whole squad out there for this World Cup. So he's going to have a role to play for sure.
Yeah, and you need guys that, as you say, like Tamal says there, that when they do come in, know what they're doing. You know what I mean, and have that confidence in the dressing room. David's been there a long time. He knows the ropes. He knows his game, and so these guys sort of sitting in the wings, called in at a moment's notice, can come in and do the job.
Who's the dependable donkey on the TMS team?
Not me.
Which bit of that is wrong? Dependable or...
Yeah. Well, I might have the ears.
I think it's high time we headed out to India, don't you? The last 3 50-over World Cups have been won by one of the hosts or co-hosts. So India 2011, Australia 2015, and of course England in 2019. India are hosting the tournament on their own for the first time. I've been speaking to Prakash Wakanka, part of the TMS team, of course. Who's out in India now?
Cricket is a religion, as I'm sure all of us know, in India in particular. And it is a celebration. So when you join up religion and celebration, you can just imagine the level of excitement. Notwithstanding all the frustrations that people have had with getting their hands on tickets and all the other shenanigans that are inevitable, like you have in a big fat Indian wedding, multiply that 1.4 billion times, and that's what you're going to find with the Cricket World Cup in India. All around the country, there is a buzz and there is absolutely unbelievable excitement.
Of course, we'll get to see and we will get to hear what it is like inside the stadiums. But what will it be like on the streets?
On the streets, one or two things will happen. Either there will be joyous celebrations if results go the way those particular fans at that particular city at that particular time want them to be. But don't be surprised if you find deserted streets when the games are going on as well. Because today, with the advent of all kinds of mediums through which people are able to watch and follow, I will not be surprised if late afternoons in India, during India matches in particular, would be a great time for people to drive around the country because roads may not have as much traffic as they're used to.
It's always the same, I think, with any major sporting event. Obviously, the better the host nation do, the better the whole event feels. But this is on another level, isn't it? I mean, if God forbid India weren't to do well, how quickly would this sort of festival of colour turn very sour?
Oh, very, very quickly, I suspect. Very quickly. Because while there are enough people who will still continue to watch and follow the game and the tournament because of their love for the game of cricket, the vast majority of Indians, like almost any other country in the world, want their team to do well. The pressure of expectation will be huge. And those kind of things, when you build it up to that level, as you can well imagine, the reverse happens equally quickly, if not even faster. So God forbid India don't make it to the semis, I think we'll have a fairly dull tail end of the tournament.
That's not going to happen, though, because they should make the semi-final, shouldn't they? I mean, I know the sort of bookmakers' favourites doesn't always tell you anything, but they are the favourites. Is that justified, do you think?
To be honest with you, I think favourites is a tag that is always a little bit of a double-edged sword, as we all know. I think the fact of the matter is, yes, India are definitely, in my book at least, among the top 3 teams to make that final and 3 of the 4 semi-final spots for sure. However, you've got to balance the pressure of expectations that gets onto a home World Cup. I mean, I think the Owen Morgan and his boys will be the first to admit, notwithstanding the brilliant result in 2019, that the pressure they played under, playing at home and knowing that they were expected to win it, was absolutely of a different level. And I think so you've got to factor in the aspect of pressure at home. You've got to factor in the fact that there is going to be, I think, weather will play a role, not necessarily rain, but dew for sure. There will be all of those factors, and don't forget the other teams. They're all out there to win the same thing. So I think India will have to play up to their full potential if India want to make the semi-finals. And thereafter that, it's a 2-game shootout, isn't it?
I suppose you've also got to add into the fact that, India aren't just hungry for glory at a Cricket World Cup. They're absolutely starving. To have gone, a decade without a win in a white ball competition, the weight makes it, it's sort of salivating, I imagine.
It is. And people in India being the way they are, they'll draw all kinds of parallels to various things, right? So they're saying, okay, 2011 after 83 was 28 years ago. This is now 12 years later, but 12 years is a long enough wait. India have probably forgotten what an ICC trophy looks like, to be honest. And they'd love to amend that or fix that problem. But I think knowing Rohit Sharma, knowing Rahul Dravid, I suspect the way they're going to approach this, even though it's a sort of standard phrase that people use, they're going to play it game by game. And if they get to the point where they are in a position to be able to win the whole thing, then of course, yes. But I don't think they will try for sure to not take on any additional pressure and just approach every game as if it was just another ODI and take it from there. That'll be their approach for sure.
You mentioned Rohit Sharma then, because he's the captain. He's 36 now. Virat Kohli is 34. So might well be their last 50-over World Cup. So, firstly, could be the perfect stage for that. But secondly, is that something that's attracting interest as well? The possibility that at the very top level, this might also be a goodbye.
Well, I think that's a feeling that people have, not just about a few players in the Indian team. I think that's going to apply to a lot of sides, isn't it? England included. I think maybe South Africa. I think the sides that don't have that issue, I think, are the Sri Lankans. They're fairly young. Several of the Afghans are fairly young. But really, if you think about even Bangladesh, there'll be a couple of senior guys. It's going to be that sense like we had in 2011. You knew it was Muralidharan's last World Cup. You knew it was Sachin Tendulkar's last World Cup, and so on and so forth. And that's inevitable. But whether that will play into any particular kind of narrative, I doubt. I think the Indian cricket team and the administration are focused on what they have to do. Rahul Dravid has had a sort of an indifferent run, and the way the system has worked, he's managed to put India, at least temporarily, at number one in all three formats of the game. Not that that means anything, because like most scoring systems around the world, it beats me how the rankings work anyway. But that apart, I think India will be looking to send off, if indeed these happen to be the last. I think it will definitely be the last World Cup, not for just these two, maybe for a few others in that squad. But it'll be a great way to say goodbye, like they did for Sachin Tendulkar. Remember, it was a young Virat Kohli who carried Sachin on his shoulders at the Wankhede in April 2011.
Prakash, you've been at this long enough to know that there's no pressure on this final question to say England. Which opponents are India most concerned about?
To be very honest with you, I mentioned earlier 3 teams. I think England, Australia, India are those 3 teams. The Australians have been around long enough. England are playing a very different form of cricket, more in test match cricket. We'll have to wait for next year to see that in action. But I think India will probably fancy their chances against the English more than the Australians. I think Australia probably pose a real threat. And if the Sri Lankans get into the semi-finals, I tell you what, I think Sri Lanka and South Africa both have the ability, if they get to the last 4, to pull off a major upset against anyone.
Prakash Wakankar, who of course will be a part of the TMS team for this Cricket World Cup. We've got Phil Tufnell and Tamal with us. Tamal Mills with us on 5 Live Cricket. Thanks for putting down your PlayStation controller to join us on the show there, Tamal.
Can see that on the Zoom, can you? I'm good at multitasking.
What are you playing?
Formula One, actually.
You're playing a Formula One game whilst on national radio.
I'm at Mr. Beat.
Wow. I mean, it's impressive. I'll give you that.
He's got a lot of concentrate on it at the
moment. I was going to say it takes a lot of something to do that, but then I realised it was the wrong time. Phil, we were just to reflect back on something we were talking about with Prakash there. Every tournament for every sport, for every team needs a strong host nation, but obviously it's especially true of a Cricket World Cup in India.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he summed it up beautifully there, Prakash, didn't he? You know, the whole nation will be behind India. It's going to be interesting just to see how they handle that, because, you know, the weight of expectation can weigh very, very heavy, especially with some of the guys, as Prakash was saying there, looking to perhaps this will be their last World Cup. They haven't sort of been pulling up trees in ICC competitions, have they, really? So there is that pressure on them, and that could work against them, but you just feel they've got all the bases covered. They know the conditions. They've got such talent in that side with bat and ball that if they just get that momentum and they get that roll, the pressure leaves you a little bit, and if you're in nick and you're feeling good, they could be too tough to stop. But I think it's wide open, as I said earlier. Prakash forgot to mention Pakistan there. One of those sides who always turn up, got a great lineup of bowlers, Pakistan, and that can be the difference sometimes in World Cups if your bowlers come to the party and take wickets. South Africa and interesting saying Sri Lanka as well. One of those sides, they could be some huge upsets along the way in this World Cup.
Having been out there then, Tamal, obviously the support for India will be on a different level to most nations experience at their own World Cups across different sports, but also the pressure and the expectation.
Sorry to just jump in here a minute. Let me tell you what it's like playing in India, right? Yeah. Okay. You get out of bed at about sort of 7:30, go and the place is quiet. You're in your room, it's quiet. And then you walk down the hall, get in your lift, you go down to breakfast, and as the doors open into the lobby, someone turns the volume up to like 20 and it's just noise, and it seems like that for the whole of the day, and then you get back in the lift, go up to your room and go, oh my, what the hell happened there? You know what I mean? It is just... the volume is turned up so high, and you're in such a sort of sounds and smells and noise, and you're looking in the stands, and it's like a tumble dryer. You know, people everywhere. I mean, it is such an amazing place to play. You really know that you're in the contest, and that is a big part of trying to just control the emotions, get the performance out of you, because when that is on a roll, it's very, very difficult to stop. Sorry, Timal, I just wanted to say.
No, it was, and on the back of that, I remember the first time I went to India was on an England tour. We had just a three match T20 series in 2016, I think it was. And I said I'd never been to India before. And, you know, in England now, so you go out, so you arrive at the game a couple of hours before, you'll go out, you know, get yourself ready, and then you'll probably go out on the outfield and have a stretch and have a bowl, bit of a loosen up. And the ground's a quarter full, you know, and it will slowly build up to half full, and then by the time the game starts, it might be at 75% full. There's still people trickling in, but in India, the stadium, if it's a big game, or especially if India are playing, the stadium's full from an hour and a half, 2 hours before the game. And I remember I was out there just having a stretch pre-game, and then the stadium just like blew up, roar went throughout the stadium, and I'm looking around like, you know, what's going on? And MS Dhoni's just come out of the pavilion to have his pre-game, you know, knock-ups, and the whole place went ballistic. And this was 2 hours probably before the match even starts. So it is a special place to play cricket, and you know, I'm looking forward to some of those. You know, when you get towards the back end of the group stages, those games that, you know, really matter, some of those big games, and then obviously when you get to the knockouts as well. There'll be some special atmospheres for sure out there. And sorry, I completely forgot what the original question was. But
no, mate.
No, you answered it. In your condition, Timal, I think that's fine. I think it's absolutely fine. Risers, and we've done the hosts. Let's get into the other contenders, and not just talk about the nations who are there, but one who isn't there. This won't be repeated this year, but the last time India hosted a limited overs World Cup match, this happened.
As Stokes comes in, bowls to Brather, hits in for 6 and wins the game with 4 successive sixes in the last over. Carlos Brathwaite is an instant hero.
Evening, Carlos.
Good evening, good evening.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm braving some thunderstorms, so I think I have the English weather on this side of the call, unfortunately.
Nah, there's only one brave man on this show tonight, Carlos, let me tell you. I don't know if you were listening earlier, but Timal has come on the programme tonight hours after a vasectomy. So who's really the brave one, Carlos? And is it really you?
My apologies.
A little bit of rain. Just a little bit of rain.
Yeah, a little bit of rain. Come on, play your big boy pants up, Carlos.
Any excuse to hear that, Carlos, that bit of audio?
Yeah, and obviously a shame that there won't be a West Indian with potentially that opportunity. Yeah, I was at the qualifiers, and I guess to watch the World Cup dreams slip away. Yeah, it was a tough pill to swallow, to be honest.
Carlos, does it go a bit further back than that, though? As you say, the West Indies obviously found themselves in the qualifying tournament for the World Cup, meaning that they hadn't automatically qualified for the tournament itself. So they obviously put themselves in that position. Would you say this has been building up over a period of years?
Yeah, 100%. And I think if you look at our ICC event exploits post the 2016 World Cup, to be honest, we haven't covered ourselves in glory. We had to qualify for the 2019 World Cup via 2018 qualifier in Zimbabwe as well. We didn't do ourselves justice in that 2019 World Cup, which I was a part of. And then there were back-to-back World Cups. The one in Dubai, we were abysmal. And then the one in Australia last year, when we didn't get out of the qualifying again. So it definitely has been a theme and a trend. And I guess when it comes to a head with missing out a World Cup, then you kind of start to think, oh, well, there's just bad luck or poor cricket. But if you look way back, you realize actually it probably is systemic. And there's a lot of work to be done to get back even close to where we were in 2016 in white ball cricket.
Yeah, Carlos Tuffers here. Big question, I know, mate. But I mean, can you put your finger on what's going wrong with West Indies cricket? I mean, we need West Indies cricket at World Cup. Simple as that, mate.
That would be a massive finger, Tuffers, I won't lie. Something an ancient dinosaur would have to put his finger on the problem. A lot of it is funding. And we obviously don't have the luxuries of getting the money that some of the other territories get. And then it's also a quite novel predicament because someone may Tamal plays for Sussex, and there might be a little bit of a rivalry and a competitiveness between the South boys and the North boys, but at the end of the day, you're all English. The West Indies have this novel thing where everyone grows up in independent countries, sovereign nations, and then the only time we come under the banner of West Indies cricket, or West Indies, is for cricket. So all loyalty is to your independent islands. That's all you know. But obviously, as a youngster growing up, you know the pinnacle is to play for West Indies. So I don't think that it is a sense of lack of loyalty or lack of wanting to represent West Indies. It is just something that has created insularity over the years. And that in itself, when it comes to the political landscape of it, has a big role to play with regards to who gets which positions, which islands gets which games and all that. So it's not always, in my opinion, decisions being made in the best interest of West Indies cricket. And a lot of time it has to do with the funding. So you go back and you kind of mesh now the politics and the funding. Let's say, for example, you have India touring or Pakistan touring subcontinent teams. You'd think you want to put them in Kensington Oval, where there's more bunks, St. Lucia, where there's more bunks, Jamaica, where there's more bunks. But actually, it makes more sense to take them to Guyana and to Trinidad, where there's a bigger Indian diaspora. You know, more people will come through the gates and you get more gate receipts. But is that the best thing for the cricket? Or is that the best thing economically and politically? So you bring Australia and England, the English tourists do a lot for the economy of the islands in the West Indies. But obviously the more attractive islands to play as English tourists would be Antigua, Barbados, St. Lucia, Grenada. So if you look at it, and St. Kitts, if you look at it the last couple tours, I don't think you will go beyond any of the 4 or 5 of those territories. When you might be asking yourself, isn't it better to take England to Guyana or Dominica, where it will spin a little more and present more of a challenge? But we can't do that because economically we need the tourists coming in, we need the Barmy Army. And then, you make a lot of decisions politically and economically that are not necessarily in the best interest of the cricket and of the team getting victories.
That does a very good job, Carlos, of explaining the situation at home and why we might not have for the first time West Indies at a Cricket World Cup. But it's also relevant what the World Cup in India will miss as a result of West Indies not being there, Carlos. Just talking to you, and obviously Darren Sammy's now head coach of the white ball side, it just makes me think of that Champions song that you all sung in 2016. And that just immediately comes to mind. So there is a festival and a flavour that West Indies bring, which is going to be sadly missed.
Yeah, Bravo is still performing it. Don't worry, the song itself is
still doing it. Bravo.
Yeah, I think he performed it in Jamaica just a couple of nights ago. But yeah, I think that's what West Indies cricket brings. And talking to different people, obviously they have their affiliation and their loyalty to their country, but everyone loves to watch the brand of cricket that West Indies play. And dare I say, the way that cricket is going now is probably as West Indian as cricket has ever been. Lots of flair, lots of attacking and aggressive intent, that gung-ho attitude where you're happy to be bowled out for 60 because you know you'd probably score 300, well, in T20 cricket actually, you're happy to bowl for 60 or 70 knowing that you'll probably get 180, 200 more often than not. And I think England have adopted that style. Okay, Australia would have probably adopted it first and led to successful red and white ball dynasty with your Glenn McGrath and Shane Warnes and Haydens and Langers. England are doing something similar now with the white ball team under Owen Morgan, and that legacy is continuing, and then Baz Ball. I just think that we haven't been able to find the resources from a player skill set to be able to do that consistently. So I think when you put our players in other teams where you have stroke makers and our players are asked to come in and do the dirty work and, you know, hit big bombs, we look fantastic in franchise teams. But if you ask us to put a full game together, I think we miss a couple integral pieces, especially batting-wise, that would allow us to be successful consistently. And I think once we can get that ironed out, it might be a very long process, but once we can get that ironed out, especially with the bat, then we'll go somewhere to winning games. The next thing would be a leg spinner of international quality and a couple fast bowlers of high speed to aid Alzarri Joseph, because right now we can't get to 330 consistently with the bat, nor do we take 10 wickets, which I think are both integral to winning 50 over games in this current climate.
Right, we've got about 4 minutes left, guys. So let's just rattle through a few of the other contenders. I mean, it's a long World Cup. There's loads of time to talk about this, but we've done England, India, Pakistan, Australia, and New Zealand have had a bit of a mention. But Phil, if England don't win it and if India don't win it, who's top of the list for you?
Probably Australia or South Africa. Everyone always says the old chokers, South Africa. I think South Africa have got a sniff at it. As I say, a few of their guys are looking to be their last World Cup as well and want to do something. Been very impressed with the Klaassen, Heinrich Klaassen, fantastic player in the middle order, great player as spin. They've got some good bowling options, good spin bowlers as well. I think that they could be bubbling under South Africa. David Miller, you can throw into that as well, all the experience of the IPL. I think they're going to be there or thereabouts.
Timal?
Yeah, I like South Africa as well. It's a shame that Amrik Nortje is not going to be there because he's up there with Mark Wood in terms of the fastest bowlers in the world at the moment. So it's a shame he's not going to be there. I agree, Sri Lanka could have been a bit of a dark horse, but I think Hasaranga's out with a hamstring injury. He's a brilliant all-rounder, a leg spinner. I think Thikshana, another one of their spinners, might be injured as well. But yeah, I do like South Africa. I think they're gonna go well in this tournament.
Carlos?
Yeah, I'll go South Africa as well, but you can never ever rule out New Zealand either. They always find ways in tournaments to come up trumps and be thereabouts in knockouts.
Is there a nation, Phil, that you think, do you know what? These guys might surprise a few people.
Well, definitely. I think there's going to be, for sure, like a Bangladesh have got a chance. I think an Afghanistan might have a chance. Just of creating or getting something going, like a Rashid Khan coming on and getting forfeit and sort of like scattering the pigeons, so to speak, or something. So there are definitely some potential sort of banana skins out there for the bigger sides to slip up on, without a doubt. We saw in the at Sydney, Sri Lanka almost do England apart from Ben Stokes in that sort of like tight, semi-final, I think it was. I know it was T20, I think. But so there's definitely going to be a few other sides. Holland, perhaps. I mean, I think they might struggle with conditions. You got to be on your money in this World Cup because anyone can turn you over.
And it's worth saying as well, Phil, just before we finish, there are quite a few people who don't necessarily think this version of the game has the longest future. So how important is it that this is a great 50-over World Cup?
Well, if it's anything like Lords, England versus New Zealand, I think that proved to everyone that it does have a long future. Mm-hmm. I mean, I enjoy 50 over cricket still, and I think that the whole of England did. I know we won, but I think it is crucial, and I think you couldn't get a better spot for it, India. I think the place is going to be buzzing, the atmosphere is going to be electric. Bring it on.